she thought she was alone in the world, until a stranger at her mother's grave whispered two words that would shatter everything she believed. But what neither of them knew was that a deadly secret was closing in, one that could either tear them apart or turn them into the family they never knew they needed. Stay with us, because this story will break your heart and then show you how love can heal even the deepest wounds. Dear friend, what you're about to experience is not just a story. It's a deeply human journey about loss, resilience, and the quiet, unexpected ways love finds us when we need it most. If this is your first time here, I invite you to drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing your voice. And if you're someone who believes in second chances and the hidden strength of ordinary people, and in stories that stay with you long after they end, consider subscribing and tapping the bell icon. We share moments that matter. Thank you for being part of this one. Now let's begin. A little girl sees a millionaire man crying at his wife's grave. He says two words and her entire world turns upside down. Before we begin, take a deep breath and prepare yourself. What you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a glimpse into love loss and the unexpected ways life brings strangers together when they need each other most. Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles is a place of grandeur where marble angels watch over the resting places of the city's wealthy and famous. It was on one crisp October morning that 7-year-old Sophie Turner, her tiny frame dwarfed by the iron gates, stepped quietly onto the manicured grounds. In her small hands, she carried a bouquet of sunflowers, her mother's favorite, wrapped in a piece of old newspaper. Sophie had spent the night at a shelter again, the latest in a string of places since her mother Olivia's sudden passing 3 months prior. The world felt empty now. The bright laughter that once filled their tiny apartment was gone. No more late-night stories, no more whispered promises that tomorrow would be better. Just silence and survival. She had come to the grave because it was the only place where she still felt close to her mother. It was the only place where she allowed herself to remember and to hope. As she approached the familiar headstone nestled beneath a sprawling oak, Sophie stopped. There was someone there. A tall man in a sharp navy suit knelt before the grave. His broad shoulders shook with silent sobs. He wasn't an ordinary man. Sophie could tell even from a distance. His watch gleamed in the sunlight. His shoes looked like the ones in the expensive magazines her mother sometimes admired. And yet, here he was, crumbling beneath the weight of grief. She hesitated. The grave was hers, or so she thought. No one else had visited it. Her mother had always said it was just the two of them against the world. Summoning her courage, Sophie stepped forward. Her voice was small but steady. "Why are you at my mom's grave?" she asked. The man startled. He turned to look at her, his face pale, his eyes red and glassy. For a moment, he looked at Sophie as though he'd seen a ghost. "My wife," he whispered. Two words that shattered Sophie's fragile world. Wife. Her mother had never mentioned a husband. It had always been just us, moving from one place to the next, never staying long enough for questions to catch up to them. Sophie's knees buckled. Her vision swam. The sunflowers slipped from her trembling fingers as her body crumpled to the ground. "Hey, hey!" The man rushed to her, panic rising in his voice. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Stay with me." She was barely conscious, tears mingling with the dirt beneath her. Through the haze, she heard him shout for help. Moments later, strong arms lifted her gently, cradling her, as though she were made of glass. She caught the faint scent of cedar and something warm, something that reminded her of home. At the hospital, as monitors beeped steadily, Ethan Blake sat beside the little girl he now knew was his late wife's daughter. His mind raced with questions. How could Olivia have kept this from him? Who was this brave little soul? sitting in front of him alone in the world. When Sophie awoke, her first instinct was to shrink away from the stranger. But there was something in his eyes of pain that mirrored her own. "I'm Ethan," he said softly. "I loved your mom very much. I didn't know about you. But now that I do, you won't be alone anymore. Not if I can help it." For Sophie, those words meant more than he could know. They pierced through the numbness that had wrapped around her since the day her mother died. Sometimes the most powerful bonds are formed in the unlikeliest of moments. And sometimes life forces us to rewrite the story we thought we knew. This was only the beginning. As Ethan gently held her hand, both unaware of the dangerous truths lurking in the shadows, one thing became certain: they would need each other more than they could ever imagine. Now, let's uncover the secrets Olivia carried, and why her two separate lives were on the brink of colliding. Ethan Blake had never been a man easily shaken. He built his empire from the ground up, a tech visionary admired for his brilliance and resilience. But sitting in the sterile hospital waiting room, watching Sophie sleep, he felt helpless. His world, once ruled by logic and control, now spun with questions and emotions he couldn't untangle. Olivia Carter, the woman he had loved more deeply than anyone. The woman he had married, trusted, and mourned for. Now, in the quiet of this moment, he realized how little he truly knew about her. He couldn't shake the image of Sophie's wide, tear-filled eyes when he had whispered those two words. "My wife." The heartbreak in her small face haunted him. What had Olivia been hiding? Why had she kept Sophie a secret? Why had she lived two separate lives? Determined to find answers, Ethan called the one person he trusted with the impossible: Grace Monroe. An old friend from his Stanford days, Grace had gone on to become a highly respected FBI agent before leaving the bureau to start her own private investigation firm. If anyone could uncover the truth, it was Grace. Within hours, Grace arrived at Ethan's penthouse apartment, her sharp gaze assessing him. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, but her tone was warm. He managed a tired smile. "I feel worse." She sat across from him, flipping open a leather notebook. "Start from the beginning." As Ethan recounted the events at the cemetery and Sophie's collapse, Grace listened intently, nodding occasionally. "Olivia Carter," she mused. Or was that her real name? "That's what I need to know." Ethan said, his voice low. "And why she never told me about Sophie." Grace began her search with government databases and public records. At first, there was little to find. Olivia Carter seemed to have appeared out of nowhere about 10 years ago. No childhood records, no family connections. It was as if she had been born the day she met Ethan. Then a breakthrough. She was in the Witness Protection Program. Grace said, her voice tight with urgency. Real name, Sarah Mitchell. The revelation hit Ethan like a physical blow. Witness protection. Olivia had never mentioned it, never hinted at a life lived in shadows. Grace continued. She testified against Luca Romano, head of a major money laundering operation connected to organized crime. Her testimony was key to putting him away. She vanished shortly after, became Olivia Carter, and started a new life. That's when you met her. Ethan's mind reeled. The woman he had adored had been running from monsters, and now those monsters were back. "There's more," Grace said softly. "Romano was released from prison last month. Early parole. Word is, he's looking for the witnesses who put him away." A chill ran through Ethan, and Sophie Grace nodded grimly. "She's in danger. Olivia must have kept you and Sophie apart to protect both of you. If Romano's men found out about you, they could trace her to Sophie." The pieces began to fit together. Olivia's late nights at the museum, the vague answers about her past. the distance she sometimes seemed to create even when they were happiest. Ethan closed his eyes, overwhelmed by a surge of grief and guilt. He had mourned Olivia deeply, but now a new grief took hold. He mourned the life they could have had, free from fear. He mourned the moments Sophie had been denied a father's embrace, a stable home, the simple joys of childhood. He opened his eyes and looked at Grace. "What do we do?" "We protect Sophie," she said firmly. "And we find out exactly what Olivia knew. There may be evidence, something she left behind." That night, after Sophie was tucked safely into the guest room, Ethan sat alone in Olivia's study. Her scent still lingered faintly in the air. He opened drawer after drawer, searching for clues. Then, beneath a stack of old sketchbooks, he found a small wooden box, carefully locked. Inside, he discovered a locket, a bundle of letters, and a USB drive. With trembling hands, he unfolded the top letter. Olivia's handwriting flowed across the page, equal parts love and sorrow. "My dearest Ethan," it began. "If you are reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I have always loved you more than I can ever say, but I had to protect you, and I had to protect our daughter." Ethan's breath caught. "Our daughter, not my daughter, ours. I wanted to tell you so many times," the letter continued. "But every time I looked into your eyes, I saw the life you deserved, a life free from fear, from shadows. I couldn't bear the thought of bringing danger to your doorstep. So I made the hardest choice of my life. I kept Sophie hidden, even from you." Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he read. Each word was a dagger, yet each word also wrapped him in Olivia's love. "There is a USB drive enclosed," Olivia wrote. "It contains evidence I gathered in case Romano ever came for us again. Use it, protect Sophie, and forgive me my love." By the time Ethan finished reading, his shoulders shook with silent sobs. The woman he had loved had carried an unimaginable burden, and she had faced it alone. He turned to the small locket, opening it gently. Inside was a tiny photo of Sophie as a baby, her bright eyes mirroring Olivia's. On the back was a single engraving, "Always protect what matters most." The weight of Olivia's words settled on Ethan's heart. He couldn't change the past, but he could honor her wish. He could fight for Sophie's future. The next morning, he met Grace in the study. "We have the evidence," he said quietly. "Now we bring it to light." Grace nodded. "And we keep Sophie safe, no matter what." As they began to plan their next steps, Ethan glanced toward Sophie's room. She slept peacefully, unaware of the storm gathering outside. For Ethan, there was no turning back. Love had bound him to Olivia. Now, love bound him to their daughter, and he would fight with everything he had to protect her. Ethan had always believed that his success was built on careful calculation and meticulous control. In his world of billion-dollar deals and high-stakes negotiations, mistakes were unacceptable. But life had changed in a matter of days. Now, the stakes weren't financial. They were human, raw, fragile, and infinitely more precious. He watched Sophie as she sat cross-legged on the thick rug in his penthouse living room, crayons scattered around her. She was drawing a picture of a house, a small simple one with a garden and two stick figures holding hands. Above them, a bright sun smiled down. "That's you and me," she explained shyly when Ethan knelt beside her. "At our house." He swallowed hard. She was trying to create a future in a world that had given her so little certainty. It was both beautiful and heartbreaking. "You'll always have a home with me," he promised, his voice thick with emotion. Grace's investigation had confirmed their fears. Romano was actively searching for Olivia's daughter. The USB drive Olivia had left behind was a treasure trove of incriminating evidence, but it had also painted a target on Sophie's back. Ethan had spared no expense in fortifying the penthouse. Security cameras covered every angle. Armed guards discreetly patrolled the building. He hired a trusted security expert, Daniel Harper, to lead the team. Yet, beneath the surface of this carefully constructed fortress, cracks were forming. The first mistake came from trust. Daniel had insisted on bringing in additional staff to handle shifts around the clock. In his desperation to ensure Sophie's safety, Ethan agreed without conducting his usual due diligence. It was a lapse born of exhaustion and fear, a lapse that nearly cost them everything. One crisp evening, Ethan returned from a meeting with Grace and Marcus Cole. As he stepped off the private elevator, chill ran through him. The usually calm hum of the penthouse felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. He found Sophie in her room, clutching her locket, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He tried to take me," she whispered, her voice shaking. Ethan's heart stopped. "Who, one of the new guards?" she sobbed. "He told me you sent him to take me somewhere safe." But I didn't believe him. I locked the door. Rage and terror surged through Ethan as he radioed Harper. Within minutes, they identified the infiltrator, one of the newly hired guards bought by Romano's men. They caught him before he could flee. But the damage was done. Sophie's sense of safety had been shattered again. Later that night, Ethan sat by her bedside as she slept fitfully. "I failed you," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I should have protected you better." The second mistake was emotional. In trying to shield Sophie from the truth, Ethan had underestimated her strength. He had kept the growing danger from her, thinking it was kinder. But children sense more than adults often realize. One afternoon, Sophie confronted him. "Why do you look so scared all the time?" she asked softly. "Are they coming for me?" Ethan knelt before her, taking her small hands in his. "Yes," he admitted, tears pooling in his eyes. "There are bad people trying to find us, but I will never let them take you, I promise." She looked at him, her gaze steady and wise beyond her years. "I want to know Daddy. Please, I can be brave if you tell me." Hearing her call him Daddy for the first time broke something inside Ethan, a dam of grief and love and fierce determination. From that moment on, he included her in their plans, giving her a sense of control amid the chaos. It strengthened their bond and gave Sophie the dignity of truth. The third mistake was believing that wealth could insulate them. Ethan's instinct had been to throw money at every problem: more security, more equipment, more experts. But Romano's network thrived on corruption and greed. No amount of money could buy true safety if trust was compromised. Grace reminded him gently one night over coffee. "You can't fight this battle alone, Ethan, not with money. You need people you can trust, and you need to trust them." It was a humbling lesson. For a man used to control, learning to lean on others was not easy, but it was necessary. The fourth mistake came from fatigue. The endless vigilance wore everyone down. Sleep became fragmented, nerves frayed. It was during one such lapse that the second attempt came. An unmarked van was spotted idling near the building late at night. By the time the team responded, it had vanished, leaving behind a chilling message spray-painted on the garage wall. "We see you." The message rattled everyone, but it galvanized Ethan. "We can't stay here," he told Grace and Marcus. "It's time to move." The final mistake was delay. They had debated when to deliver the USB drive to federal authorities. Fear of corruption within the system made them cautious, but caution had bought Romano time. As Grace decrypted the last of the files, they discovered a new horror. Romano had obtained access to Olivia's old safe deposit box, one they hadn't known existed. If he found any remaining evidence, he could twist it to his advantage or use it to locate them. There was no more time for hesitation. That night, Ethan packed their essentials. As he zipped Sophie's small backpack, she came to him clutching her drawing. "Can we still have a house like this one day?" she asked, her voice trembling. He gathered her into his arms, holding her tightly. "Yes, sweetheart. One day we will. I promise you." As they left the penthouse under the cover of darkness, Ethan carried that promise like a torch in the night. Mistakes had almost destroyed their chance for a new life, but they had survived. Together. And now, the fight to protect Sophie and honor Olivia's legacy was just beginning. The cabin in Jackson Hole sat nestled beneath towering pines, its weathered timber walls holding back the chill of the Wyoming air. It wasn't grand, it wasn't modern, but for Ethan Blake and Sophie Turner it was sanctuary, a place untouched by the shadows that had chased them from Los Angeles. Grace Monroe and Marcus Cole had orchestrated the move with precision. In a single night, under new identities and behind layers of protection, Ethan and Sophie had disappeared from the city's watchful eyes. They arrived in Wyoming under a gray dawn, exhausted but alive. For Sophie, the transition wasn't easy. Each new place meant another goodbye, another reminder of all she had lost. Yet, as the days unfolded in the quiet of the mountains, something remarkable began to happen. It started with the little things. On their first morning, Sophie awoke to the sound of Ethan clumsily preparing breakfast. She padded into the small kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes to find him battling with a stubborn waffle iron. "I thought waffles would be fun," he said sheepishly. She giggled, a sound that cut through the lingering fear between them. "I can help?" she offered, her voice soft. And so they did it together, mixing batter, laughing when the first waffle came out, burnt, cheering when the second one was perfect. In that simple act, walls began to crumble. A new rhythm took root. Ethan learned to braid Sophie's hair, a skill he never imagined needing. Sophie taught him to appreciate the magic of bedtime stories, her small voice correcting him when he misread a line. They built snowmen in the yard, their laughter echoing through the frosty air. Each shared moment wove another thread into the fragile fabric of trust between them. Yet the deeper bond formed not through joy alone, but through shared vulnerability. One evening, as a storm howled outside, Sophie sat curled on the couch, her locket clutched tightly. "Do you think she's watching us?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan knelt beside her, his own emotions raw. "I believe she is," he said softly, "and I think she's very proud of you." Tears welled in Sophie's eyes. "I miss her so much," she whispered. Ethan drew her close, his heart breaking. "I miss her too, sweetheart. Every day." That night, Sophie fell asleep in his arms, a milestone neither of them spoke of, but both felt deeply. For Ethan, the weight of fatherhood settled on his shoulders not as a burden, but as a gift, a second chance to love, protect, and guide. The greatest test of their growing bond came when Grace decrypted the final piece of Olivia's evidence, a video message recorded just weeks before her death. Together, Ethan and Sophie sat before the small screen, their hands intertwined. "My dearest loves," Olivia's voice began, her image flickering. "If you are watching this, it means I couldn't be there to see you together. But that was always my hope, that one day the two people I loved most would find each other." Sophie gasped softly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ethan Olivia continued, "I know this is not the life we dreamed of, but I trust you to protect our daughter. Teach her that love is stronger than fear, and Sophie, my brave girl, know this: you are never alone. You have a father who will love you with all his heart." As the message ended, the room was silent, save for the quiet sobs of a little girl and the steady tearful breath of a man who had lost his wife and found a daughter. Ethan scooped Sophie into his arms, holding her close. "I love you, Sophie," he whispered. "I will always love you." For a long moment she clung to him, her tears wetting his shirt. Then, in a small broken voice, she spoke words that forever sealed their bond. "I love you too, Daddy." In that instant, strangers became family not by blood but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable will to stand together against whatever darkness lay ahead. As the days passed, their bond only deepened. They created new rituals, a nightly walk beneath the stars where Sophie would share stories about her mother, a morning routine where Ethan would pack her lunch with handwritten notes of encouragement. In those moments, they honored Olivia not through mourning, but through living. And in living, they healed. The cabin's walls, once a refuge of necessity, became a home built on laughter, learning, and unwavering love. Yet, beyond the safety of their haven, the fight was not over. Grace's intelligence confirmed that Romano's reach was closing in. It was time to face the threat head-on to ensure that the family they had forged through loss and love would not be torn apart. With resolve, Ethan met Grace and Marcus at the cabin's worn kitchen table. "It's time," he said quietly. "We bring this to light. We end it for Olivia, for Sophie, for all of us." Grace nodded. Marcus clasped his shoulder. They had weathered mistakes, embraced unexpected love, and become a family stronger than fear. Now together they would fight for their future. The morning sun barely pierced the heavy clouds hanging over the federal courthouse in Los Angeles. Ethan Blake stood at the entrance, Sophie's small hand gripping his tightly. Beside them, Grace Monroe and Marcus Cole checked their surroundings, eyes sharp, nerves coiled tight. This was the moment they had prepared for, the day they would deliver the evidence Olivia had died to protect. Agent Margaret Hale met them at the secured entrance, her calm demeanor masking the tension she undoubtedly felt. The USB drive containing every detail of Romano's operation was safe in Grace's possession. They were here to testify to ensure that the truth Olivia had uncovered would finally see the light. As they entered the courtroom, Ethan felt Sophie's hand tremble in his. He knelt beside her. "Are you sure you want to be here?" he asked gently. She nodded, her chin trembling, but her eyes fierce. "Mom would want me to be brave." A single sentence that shattered Ethan's heart all over again. This child, his daughter, carried a courage far beyond her years. He kissed her forehead. "I'm so proud of you." The proceedings unfolded slowly, each piece of evidence meticulously presented. Grace's testimony was clear and damning. The judge listened intently as Agent Hale explained how Olivia's work had dismantled Romano's financial empire. But the most powerful moment came when Ethan spoke. Taking the stand, he recounted Olivia's love, her sacrifices, and her unwavering determination to protect Sophie. His voice broke as he described finding the locket, hearing Olivia's final words, and the promise he made to their daughter. Across the room, Romano sat cold and expressionless, yet for the first time his power seemed to wither beneath the weight of truth. When the verdict was read guilty on all counts, relief washed over Ethan, Grace, Marcus, and most of all, Sophie. Tears streamed down her face as she clung to Ethan. "We did it, Daddy," she whispered. "Yes, we did," he replied, voice thick with emotion. In the days that followed, life began to shift again. The threat was gone, but the scars remained. Yet within those scars lay invaluable lessons, truths Ethan carried forward, not just as a father, but as a man forever changed by love and loss. The first lesson was humility. No amount of wealth or power could shield a heart from grief, nor replace the bonds forged in adversity. Ethan had built an empire, but it was the fragile trust of a 7-year-old girl that had taught him the true meaning of strength. He remembered one quiet evening back at the cabin. Sophie had asked him, "Did you used to be scared?" He had knelt beside her. "I still am, sometimes. But being brave doesn't mean not feeling scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are." The second lesson was trust. Ethan had always relied on himself, believing control was the key to safety. But it was Grace's wisdom, Marcus's loyalty, and Sophie's unwavering faith that had carried them through the darkest moments. True strength came from leaning on others, allowing love to bridge the gaps fear could not. One morning, as they packed to leave the cabin, Ethan found Sophie placing her favorite drawing, a simple house with 2 stick figures and a bright sun, into her backpack. For our new home, she explained, so we remember. Ethan smiled, eyes glistening. We'll make it a real home. Together. The third lesson was presence. In the rush of business, Ethan had often chased tomorrow at the expense of today. But Olivia's death had crystallized one truth: moments matter. Bedtime stories, burnt waffles, walks beneath starlit skies, these were the threads that wove a life worth living. One crisp autumn afternoon, Ethan and Sophie visited a quiet park. Watching her chase falling leaves, laughter ringing through the air, Ethan realized that happiness was found not in achievements, but in the ordinary joys shared with those we love. The fourth lesson was forgiveness. Ethan had wrestled with anger at Olivia for her secrets, at himself for not seeing the signs. But in the end, love demanded grace. He chose to honor Olivia not through resentment, but by embodying the hope she had left behind. One evening, Sophie sat on his lap, tracing the locket's engraving. "Do you think Mommy forgives me for not saving her?" she asked, voice small. Ethan's heart shattered. "Oh, sweetheart," he whispered, tears falling freely. "There was nothing to forgive. She loved you more than anything, and she knew you were brave and good. That's why she trusted me to be here for you." The final lesson was legacy. Wealth could build monuments, but love built futures. Ethan no longer measured success by balance sheets, but by the laughter in Sophie's voice, the trust in her eyes, and the family they were becoming. Months later, in a sunlit courtroom, Ethan formally adopted Sophie. The judge's words blurred through tears as Sophie squeezed his hand. Afterward, beneath a brilliant sky, they visited Olivia's grave together. Sophie placed fresh lilies and her old drawing at the stone. "We're okay now, Mommy," she said softly. "Daddy takes good care of me." Ethan knelt beside her, voice breaking. "Thank you for bringing her into my life," he whispered. As they walked away hand in hand, Ethan carried not just memories of the woman he had loved, but the lessons she had gifted them both. Humility, trust, presence, forgiveness, legacy. Lessons born from a millionaire's fight to protect his daughter. Lessons that transformed strangers into family. And a love that would endure far beyond fear. The story of Ethan Blake and Sophie Turner is not just about a millionaire's fight to protect his daughter. It's about the invisible threads that bind us, the power of love to transform, and the courage it takes to forgive what we may never fully understand. In a world where so much feels uncertain, where betrayal and loss can come without warning, Ethan and Sophie's journey offers a powerful reminder of what truly matters. When Ethan first knelt at Olivia's grave, he believed he knew the whole story of his life. He was a self-made man who thought success could insulate him from life's harsher lessons. But in that moment, faced with the fragile courage of a little girl who had just lost everything, he learned his first and most humbling lesson: we are never truly in control. Sophie, despite her young age and deep loss, demonstrated an astonishing capacity for resilience. She reminded Ethan and all of us that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about moving forward despite the fear. Watching her pick up the pieces of her shattered world and choose to trust again wasn't just inspiring, it was transformational. One of the deepest moral lessons we can take from this story is the importance of patience and empathy. Olivia's choices, while painful and confusing for Ethan, were rooted in an unfathomable love. She lived in constant fear, not for herself, but for those she loved most. Too often, we rush to judgment when someone's actions don't make sense to us. We assume betrayal, weakness, or selfishness, when in reality they may be making the hardest choice imaginable to protect us. Ethan's journey forced him to confront this truth. In the beginning, anger and betrayal nearly consumed him. But when he chose to see Olivia's actions through the lens of compassion, everything shifted. He began to understand that love sometimes requires sacrifice, silence, and unbearable restraint. In doing so, he found the strength to forgive. That lesson extends far beyond the confines of their story. In our own lives, how often do we hold on to resentment, refusing to see the complexity behind others' choices? How often do we withhold forgiveness because we crave a simple explanation that may never come? The story of Ethan and Sophie urges us to practice grace, to accept that sometimes love is messy, complicated, and painfully imperfect. Another profound takeaway is the importance of presence. Ethan, a man who once measured life in business deals and stock prices, discovered that no amount of money could substitute for showing up, truly being present for someone in need. Through bedtime stories, burnt waffles, and quiet moments beneath the stars, he built a bridge to Sophie's heart. It was in those small, consistent acts of love that trust blossomed and healing began. For all of us navigating busy, distracted lives, this is a crucial reminder. Presence matters more than perfection. The time we spend fully engaged with those we love creates a foundation no amount of wealth or achievement can replace. It tells them you are valued, you are safe, and you are loved. Finally, this story teaches us about legacy. Ethan came to understand that the true measure of a life well lived is not the fortune we accumulate or the accolades we receive. It's the love we leave behind, the impact we have on those who carry our memory forward. Through Sophie, Olivia's courage and goodness lived on. And through Ethan's choice to embrace fatherhood with an open heart, he ensured that Sophie would grow up not defined by loss, but empowered by love. In your own life, ask yourself, what legacy am I building? Am I choosing love over fear, forgiveness over bitterness, presence over distraction? These small, everyday choices shape the world around us more than we often realize. As you reflect on this story, I encourage you to extend patience to those whose struggles you may not see. Offer grace where judgment is tempting. And above all, be present with those you love. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support fuels our passion for bringing you more stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul. Thank you for being here, and we can't wait to share the next story with you.